stories fade with time, buried beneath silence, lost in forgotten files, or dismissed as mysteries that will never be solved. But behind every case is a voice that was never heard, a truth still waiting in the dark. This channel is dedicated to the victims, the unanswered questions, and the stories that refuse to disappear. Because somewhere, someone still knows what happened. Welcome to Cries Unheard in the Darkness. Inez, Illinois, 1987. It's a village so small that most maps treat it like an afterthought. In the late 80s, it was the kind of place where your neighbor's business was your business, and the local Baptist church was the heartbeat of the community. Among its most respected residents were Russell Keith Dardeen, known as Keith, and his wife, Ruby Elaine. Keith was a vocal leader at the church, and Elaine played the piano. They were young, hardworking, and deeply protective of their 2-year-old son, Peter. But there was a shadow over Jefferson County. In the 2 years leading up to November 1987, 15 homicides had rocked the rural landscape. It started with the Odie family murders in nearby Mount Vernon, where a teenager killed 5 members of his own family. Fear had become a local currency. Keith Dardeen felt it more than most. He told his mother, Joanne, that the area was becoming too violent. He had recently put their mobile home up for sale, desperate to move his pregnant wife and son back to the safety of Mount Carmel. He was so cautious that when a stranger knocked on his door asking to use the phone, he refused. He wasn't taking chances. He didn't know that the danger wasn't just knocking. It was already watching. November 18th, 1987. Keith was a man of clockwork reliability. He worked as a treatment plant operator at the Rend Lake Water Conservancy District. When he failed to show up for his shift without a call, his supervisor knew something was wrong. Calls to the house went unanswered all day. By that evening, Keith's father, Don, met Jefferson County deputies at the family's mobile home. The trailer sat near the Illinois Central Railroad tracks. The interior was unnervingly orderly. There was no sign of a struggle in the kitchen or the living room, but when they reached the bedroom, the air changed. Tucked into the same bed, arranged with a horrific, perverse sense of care, were the bodies of 30-year-old Elaine and young Peter. The scene was a paradox of extreme brutality and bizarre domesticity. They had been beaten to death with a baseball bat, a bat Keith had bought for Peter's birthday earlier that year. The horror went deeper. Elaine had been in the final stages of pregnancy. The sheer force of the attack had induced premature labor. A newborn girl, later named Casey, was found deceased alongside her mother and brother. The killer had stayed long enough to clean the crime scene and tuck the victims in. One person was missing. Keith, and so was the family's red 1981 Plymouth. For the first 24 hours, the investigation had a single target, Keith Dardeen. The logic was grimly standard for law enforcement. The missing father is usually the murderer. An armed team was dispatched to his mother's home in Mount Carmel, expecting a standoff with a family annihilator. But the following day, 3 hunters were walking through a wheat field just south of the Franklin, Jefferson County line, near Rend Lake College. They found Keith. He hadn't fled. He had been shot 3 times and subjected to horrific genital mutilation. Forensic analysis would later suggest he was killed within an hour of his family. The killer hadn't just murdered him. They had humiliated him. The car was found 11 miles away, parked directly outside the police station in Benton. Its interior was splattered with blood. It was a taunt. A killer leaving the getaway vehicle right on the doorstep of the people hunting them. Local coroners clashed over the details. Was Keith killed by the gunshots, or by a massive head injury sustained while being dragged from the car? The lack of forced entry at the trailer suggested one of 2 things. Either Keith knew his killer, or someone had used the "for sale" sign as a ruse to get inside. The case went cold for years, leaving the community paralyzed. Rumors of satanic cults and ritual sacrifices swirled, fueled by the mutilation and the tragic circumstances of the birth. People began driving with shotguns in their gun racks. Students were escorted to their cars by parents after basketball games. Then, in the early 2000s, a name surfaced from a Texas death row inmate. Tommy Lynn Sells. Sells was a drifter and a prolific serial killer. After being sentenced for the murder of a girl in Texas, he claimed responsibility for the Dardeen family. His story changed multiple times. In one version, he met Keith at a gas station. In another, he used the "for sale" sign to gain entry. He described the trailer's layout and mentioned using duct tape, a detail not widely publicized. However, Sells was a serial confessor. He often claimed crimes he didn't commit to gain notoriety or leverage. Texas authorities refused to allow him to travel to Illinois to provide a formal walkthrough of the scene. Joanne Dardeen, Keith's mother, spent years trying to get to the truth. She initially believed Sells, but as his stories shifted and became more outlandish, including claims that Keith had invited him home for a threesome, her belief shattered. Tommy Lynn Sells was executed in 2014. He took the truth, or his lies, to the grave. Another serial killer, Angel Maturino Resendez, known as the Railway Killer, was also considered because the Dardeen home sat near the tracks, but no evidence ever linked him. Today, the Dardeen homicides remain officially unsolved. The trailer is long gone, the field has been replanted many times, but the scars on the community remain. Joanne Dardeen never stopped fighting. She gathered thousands of signatures to get the case on national TV, trying to keep the memory of Keith, Elaine, Peter, and Casey alive. She didn't want them remembered as a disturbing case file. She wanted them remembered as the family who sang and played piano on Sunday mornings. In southern Illinois, the silence of the cornfields still holds a different meaning for those who remember 1987. It's a silence that asks a question that may never be answered. Who walked into that trailer, and how have they remained in the shadows for nearly 40 years? If you have any information regarding this case, please contact the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office in Illinois. Thanks for listening to Cries, Unheard in the Darkness. If this story stayed with you, you're not alone. Like and subscribe, because the darkness always has more to say. Until next time, listen carefully,